Please join me in the chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as a people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light the stream of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. So my name is Emily, Reverend Emily. You guys hear me on the mic? Okay, good. And I'm happy to be here with you. There was such a beautiful energy this morning as you guys all came in. And I was here like an hour early and no one was here and it didn't quite feel like church yet. I think it doesn't really feel like church, until people come in the door. So I'm so happy to be here with you. One of my favorite things about being a minister is that I get to work with people of all different ages. And this is a story that I'm going to tell. It's an old story, but I need all different kinds of people to help me tell it. And some of you might know this story. It's the story of Noah and the ark. How many of you have heard this story? And how many of you have seen this story acted out live in person before? Oh, exciting day. So I hear that Noah is with us. Come on up, Noah. Noah was a fine, upstanding gentleman. And God said to Noah, I'm going to send a great flood that's going to cover the earth. Noah got a little scared. Oh, not so certain about what's going to happen. But God said, I'm asking you to build a giant ark, a big boat. So Noah got to work building. And the ark came slowly over time, a large, large ark. And Noah called to the animals of the air, and the hawks came. Where are my hawks? The hawks came into the ark. And Noah called all the animals of the land, and the elephants came. The elephants came into the ark. It was getting a little crowded in there, but not all the animals were in yet. And so there were the animals of the sea and the water. And there were some frogs. Are there any frogs here this morning? Frogs. Jump, jump. Every last little frog to the ark. And then, of course, you know what happened? The rains came. So you are all the rains, starting like this. All the rain. The rain became harder and faster. And the ark swayed. And the water rose higher and higher. And Noah looked out from the ark, and he saw that the rains had stopped. And he sent a very small dove out into the sky, and the dove searched out for land and came back, and there was no land. He sent it out again the next week. Still no land. And finally, it went out and brought back a branch. And Noah knew that the flood was over. So the ark landed, and all the animals came out, a little sea-legged, but there nonetheless. And the frogs jumped home to their new home. And there was a rainbow. You guys see the rainbow with me? And the story says that this rainbow was a promise that life would continue. That life would continue and that God and humanity and people and animals were all in this together. They were all in this together. Thank So I'm standing in the middle of Manhattan, and I'm watching two children run straight towards a polar bear. The polar bear seems rather friendly, and he gives them a big hug and lifts them up on his shoulders. And together they look out across the sea of people in the city. We are, all of us, myself, the polar bear, the children, and 400,000 other people in New York City for the People's Climate March 2 weeks ago. So this march was the largest climate action in the history of the world. And I was there. I know a few of you might have been there also, or were there in spirit for sure. But for those of you who weren't, I wanted to share a few images so you kind of have a sense of what it was like there. So just a glimpse, but I hope it gives you some sense of the powerful experience that it was. And every one of the thousands of people who marched had a reason for being there. And for some, it was real concern about the health of their children and their children's climate. It's the fact that maybe the island nation that they live on could be covered in water in just a few decades. And there were people there against fracking and oil drilling and pollution and GMOs, and a whole list of things we're against. But I think it's important, particularly when talking about climate change, to remember what we're for, to remember why we're doing this work. And I know that facts and figures often are not very inspiring or easy to connect with your heart. So as I was preparing to speak with you all, I needed to figure out what was it that made this particular issue, this particular movement important to me. And I don't have any children yet, and I don't live on an island nation. And so as I thought about this, I thought about the fact that this is my first autumn in New York, as someone was saying earlier. And I'm in love. I'm in love with the orange and the red and the magic of fall that I think you can only see almost when you see it for the first time. I'm in love with the fact that it's all changing and that it's because of the sun and the air and the water, that is what creates the magic of the colors. So for me, I care about the earth because it's beautiful. Simply because it's beautiful, it is of value to me. And the protest had me thinking about the story of Noah. So you all heard sort of the traditional story earlier in our opening words. And at the protest, I carried a sign. And my sign said, "There is no ark." There is no ark. And I got a lot of confused glances and looks, and some people gave me a knowing high five. And I think that the sign might have needed the little context of the story, perhaps. But it maybe needs a context of the story we're in right now as well. So in the Hebrew Scriptures, where the story of Noah comes from, the Old Testament, we first learn that Noah is a blameless man. Did you hear that? Did you know that about you? Blameless. Blameless man. So this is sort of our first indication that we're working with a parable, a teaching parable that really has wisdom throughout the ages. That's why it's been around for so long. So in this traditional story, Noah sort of comes out looking like the hero, right? Right? Like, you built that ark. You got all the animals on it. But one thing that we learn in seminary is to look very closely at the text. And sort of in between the text, I think you can see Noah's organized wife. She was there making sure everybody had their hats and their coats and their sweaters, was out the door at the right time. And you know, the Bible tells us that Noah was 600 years old. So there were not only Noah's children, but his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And who do you really think rounded up all the animals? That was not Noah. That was all of his kids, right? All of his grandkids. So the story of Noah is not one of a singular hero, but really of a community of people acting in relationship with the earth, with God, with this mysterious flood. So I think the story has a lot of relevance for us today. Because the tough news in our time is that it's not God who sent a flood. The actions of rising global temperatures and waters are because of human omissions, human actions. And so in our time, there are 7 billion people on the planet, and another billion fungi and organisms and plants and animals of the land and sea and water. And they are not going to fit on one big boat. There is no ark in our time. Except that when I was at the march, there was an ark. There was a church that had built a large float. It was an ark. And their float said, We're all Noah now. We are all Noah now. And so I stood there with my "there is no ark" sign next to the ark, and I thought maybe we have something to learn from each other here in the streets of New York City. But it's a difficult question. If there really is no ark, is there this promise that life will continue? Is that something we can trust? How do we know that there won't be a flood that will destroy the earth? And whose responsibility for it is? Who's responsible for this? So if I am Noah and you are Noah, the ark we must build is of a different kind. It is not one of wood and nails, but it is an ark of promises to care and protect one another. It may be a legislative ark that shields the Amazon from deforestation, or an ark of hospitality that we offer to those who have been affected by violent storms. It's a promise to try, to start something, to take a risk. Because, I think Noah was sort of like building the ark with his family, and it was like the first people who drove hybrid cars, right? All the neighbors were like, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy business. And yet, Noah and his family were telling the animals, we will care for you. We will make a place for you because our survival depends on yours. So there's no perfectly safe place we can go to get away from the situation we're in, and there's actually no guarantees. We're vulnerable. That's the hardest part, I think, to face. If we are all Noah, then we are all standing on the edge, looking out at an uncertain future, holding our animals and our children close. I have often wished as an activist, as an organizer, that sort of like justice or peace or ecological balance was something I could just enter into my GPS, right? Like, world peace. I just want to get there. I just want to, punch it in, get the directions, left on 19, straight ahead, 2 miles down. But it doesn't work that way, right? We know this, that there's no perfect roadmap. There's no one solution. But we're all in the car. We're already on the road. And not to act is also inaction. So the good news is that we're already in a place that can adapt and thrive and sustain life. We're already here. It's called Earth. It is our one giant ark. It's the only place that we will really survive and thrive in. And now I know science fiction movies have a totally different story to tell you, but I think this is part of our work, from flipping the script to how the heck are we going to get out of here, to how the heck are we going to stay here and make it work for everyone. So standing in the middle of New York City with 400,000 people, I didn't feel so worried. I think that was the beautiful part of it, is this feeling of all these people care and they're doing something. And it's the same feeling I have when I'm in a congregation. It's this sense of trust. I can trust others to hold this with me. And I don't know of any promise more sacred or more beautiful. On the drive back from New York, I was carpooling with a group of friends, and one of them was an Israeli. And I said, we're just going over and over on this question of how does change actually happen? Kind of wanting that GPS again. How do you know what you're doing is going to make a difference? And my friend said, Emily, I think it's kind of a little bit more mysterious than that. It's all about the third element. So if the first element is what you know, it's like your plan or your information or your statistics, and the second element is, who you are and what you're doing and the people you're doing it with, the third element, it's this thing that's hard to describe, but it's there, it's part of it. It's the spark, it's the surprise, it's what you can't control. And nothing really happens without it. It's like the alchemists say, the third is not given. Call it grace, call it creativity, call it risk, call it God, but it conspires with us to bend the world not into an arc that you crowd into 2 by 2, but into an arc, as Theodore Parker, theologian, said, an arc of the moral universe that bends towards justice. A friend told me that, Emily, I don't think you can really do anything to stay safe, but you can do what you think is right. And that is as close to safe as you are ever going to get. I saw the polar bear one more time before I left New York City. He was part of another demonstration the day after on Monday, and it was a civil disobedience. They were taking up space on the street, and the polar bear was getting arrested. The polar bear was in handcuffs. Safety is not guaranteed. We live in an unpredictable, often dangerous world, and yet we are not alone. The ancestors are with us, the polar bears and the butterflies and the frogs and the hawks and the elephants. Collective action requires our imagination to change everything. We need everyone. So there's no waiting for a guarantee of victory. There is only now. There is only what you can do. And there is everything that matters for you to do it. I can't end this story with a rainbow. I don't have that power. But collectively, we do have power, and so much is happening in this community already to care for the earth. And so my closing is simply an invitation to you to have the conversation with one more person about what you can do to make our ark a livable, happy place to be. Amen, and blessed be.
Please rise if you're willing and able to sing our final hymn together, number 163, 163.
Holy Earth,
extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor Daniel Brigham.